Florida's longest-serving inmate, Boast Laster. Boast Laster, or as many call him as Bo, was born in Georgia on December 27th, 1944. At the time, his parents already had too many kids to take care of, so Boast's biological parents gave him to friends of theirs, Mr. and Mrs. Laster. The Laster family would eventually move from Georgia to an agricultural town in Florida called Florida City. Florida City is located only 2 miles from Homestead, Florida. Both are within the Miami-Dade area. Fast forward to 1962, Florida City had a population of only about 4,000 people. At the time, Bo was 17. He was in high school, but struggled with his reading. Despite this, he excelled in sports. Bo would eventually get to play baseball in Homestead, Florida, on the St. Louis Cardinals spring training camp squad as an infielder. Now, Bo had the dream of playing professional baseball. Bo Laster, living in Florida City, in quotes, "It was a good life. Everybody knew everybody around the neighborhood. You can go to Mississippi and back, leave the doors open. Ain't nobody gonna go into your house and take nothing," end quotes. Bo's dad worked at a fruit processing plant. He was also a deacon at a local Baptist church. Bo's mom was a housemaid. She was well known for her cooking things like ham hocks, black-eyed peas with rice, also sweet potato pie. Bo was a good kid back then. There was one thing that Bo would do that got him in trouble. That was drinking. When Bo was only 15, he got his first drink of moonshine from his uncle. Every time Bo would drink, he would get into fights. He also broke into a local sandwich shop, but he didn't get caught for that. He would eventually commit an armed robbery when drunk at 16. He was arrested. Since Bo was only 16, he would spend 18 months at a notorious place called Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys. Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys was located in Marianna, Florida, which is located in Florida's Panhandle. This reform school was full of violence with staff beatings, the boys, reports of rape and murder. He would be beat by staff and punished for the smallest mistakes. Bo survived the 18 months of hell and eventually got to go back home, back to Florida City, to his family, longtime girlfriend, and friends. Bo would eventually get a job at a grocery store, and his focus was to stay out of trouble, go to school, work, and play on baseball. Also, Bo was offered a contract to play on the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team soon, though his whole life would change, not for a good happy life in the free world, living out his dreams, but for the worst because of a crime that happened late night, July 19th, 1963. He was arrested but the thing is, he is most likely innocent. July 19th, 1963. Bo Laster had been with his girlfriend that night. He planned to marry her in the near future. It was getting late, so he walked his girlfriend home, gave her a kiss goodnight, and left to a local black hangout that was popular in the Florida City area called Lucy Street Bar. While at Lucy Street Bar, Bo would start drinking, shooting dice with his friends. Bo would befriend a 21-year-old man named Reed Bryant. The two were hanging out when an argument broke out, and somebody started to shoot a gun. Everybody at the bar ran and drove off in their cars. Bo didn't have a car, but his friend Reed did. The two got in Reed's car and sped off. Reed Bryant would eventually blow past a Homestead police officer. Bo and Reed were eventually arrested. after being pulled over. Boast Laster was at the time only being charged with being drunk in public. Reed Bryant was charged with reckless driving. Reed was able to post bond, while Boast stayed in jail. Boast later would be transported from the local jail to a jail in the city of Miami, about 36 miles away from Florida City. This was one thing that confused Bo, is why would he be transported 36 miles to a jail in Miami for being drunk in public? On July 21st, 1963 is when Bo finds out why he's in jail in Miami. Miami detectives told Bo that he was the prime suspect in a rape that occurred on the night of July 19th, 1963 in Florida City. According to police, an unnamed newlywed couple went to a rock pit that had some water in it so people could swim to cool off. This rock pit is a lover's lane for the locals in Florida City. The newlywed couple got there around 11 p.m. The two decided to go for a swim for a bit. Then they went back in the car, talked for a little while longer before they decided to go home around 12 a.m. The couple had seen a flashlight sign in their eyes. A voice behind the flashlight said police. The odd thing was the couple noticed there were two young-looking black men outside of the car. Also, the men looked too young to be police officers. Another thing that stuck out was the men weren't in uniform. Lastly, there were no black police officers working in Florida City at the time. The husband started up the car and tried to drive off, but the car got stuck in palmetto thicket. Next thing that happened was the car window was smashed from the outside. The couple rushed out of the passenger side door. The wife ran. One of the men chased after her. The other man stayed behind and stabbed the husband with an ice pick in the shoulder, and also hit the husband upside the head with a rock. When the husband came to, he couldn't find his wife or the men that attacked them. The husband ran to a nearby house to get help. He called the police at the house, then ran back to the rock pit to hopefully find his wife. When he got back to the rock pit, he searched the area and couldn't find anybody. But around 1:30 a.m., the wife showed back up, walking down a road. A man that is in the Air Force stopped to ask if she needed any help because she looked distraught, and it was late at night. The man in the Air Force gave their wife a ride back home. Her husband and the police detectives were already there. The wife told detectives she was caught by the two black men. She was put into a car. One of the men drove, while the other man was in the back seat with the wife. Once the men found a secluded area, the men forced themselves on the young woman. One of the men got back into the driver's seat. The other man stayed in the back seat. The car drove off. The wife found that the door wasn't closed all the way. She bit the man sitting next to her on the left arm. She jumped out of the car and started running off into the woods. The attackers tried finding her but couldn't. The wife and husband did give descriptions of their attackers and also went to the hospital called Jackson Memorial Hospital located in Miami, Florida. The wife had a cut above her left eye. Also, the doctors did say there are signs of the wife being assaulted. The doctors never checked her with an assault kit like they would in 2024. This is because there was no such thing as DNA testing back then in the 1960s. And there was no assault kits then either. So there's no DNA to prove who really did this. Back to Boast Laster. When he found out that he was a suspect in a rape, Bo tried to tell Miami detectives that he didn't do it. The police didn't believe him since supposedly the wife and husband were already shown a mugshot of Boast. and they said that Boast Laster was their attacker. Boast claims while in the interrogation room, the detectives held a gun to his head and called him the N-word. They beat Boast up so badly that they cracked his rib and knocked out 4 teeth. Bo was interrogated all that day until 12:50 a.m. Bo Laster confessed to the crime to Metro Dade Detective Larry Foreman and was hooked to a polygraph machine, and a stenographer, Gertrude Puff, read the results as true. Boast Laster's dad came to see him. He remembers his dad saying, quotes, "I know you didn't do it," end quote. Later that day, Boast was transported to the hospital to treat his injuries. Not long after this, Boast and Reed Bryant were charged with rape. Back in the 1960s, this crime was considered a capital offense. In the state of Florida, capital offenses can carry a sentence of death by electric chair if found guilty. Anybody being charged with this crime needed a good lawyer. The thing is, the average person isn't always able to afford the best lawyer, and so have to deal with a public defender. And back then, in the 1960s, these public defenders were way worse than what they are today. Also to be noted, a lot of the time, the public defender given to people back in the 60s in the state of Florida weren't always a lawyer who practiced criminal law. They would be a lawyer who practices civil law. I know me, I would want a lawyer that actually practices criminal law, not anything like civil law, because you won't get a good defense. Plus, these lawyers were only paid $500 for defending their clients, which isn't much, and it's not much money to buy of a good defense. But Bo and Reed got a good lawyer. He was a 33-year-old Philip Carlton. He was a good criminal lawyer and has won big cases in his short 4 years of practicing criminal law back when this case was happening in 1963. Here's where things get messed up and crazy. There were other suspects in this case. When it comes to the other suspects that comes into play because of the conflicting details the newlywed couple gave to the police, the wife says that her attackers were both 5'10" to 5 feet 11 inches tall and weighed around 175 pounds. Boast Laster is 6 foot 2 inches tall and weighed 150 pounds. Even though no record of Reed Bryant's height and weight could be found, Bo says that Reed Bryant was really short, estimates him to be about 5 foot tall and weighing between 100 to 120 pounds. The wife also says that the car her attackers drove was white over chocolate, brown 4-door with a Continental kit. This kit is described as an upright mounted tire on the outside of the trunk. The car Reed Bryant drove the night they were arrested was totally different. Reed Bryant's car was a white over pink 2-door 1954 Ford Victoria with no Continental kit. The wife gave these descriptions of her attackers and the clothes they were wearing. The driver of the car wore a white and red striped shirt and dark brown pants. The man in the back seat with the wife, he wore a white shirt and black pants. The night Boast, Laster, and Reed Bryant were arrested, this is what they were wearing. Bo Laster was wearing a green shirt with green and brown striped pants. Reed Bryant, he was wearing a gray suit with a white shirt. There could be a possibility that Bo and Reed changed their clothes before their arrest, but I feel like that's not happening in this case. This is the police theory of that night. Around midnight, he and a friend left Lucy Street Bar and made their way 1.5 miles to the Rock Pit, spotted a lone car, and decided to rob the occupants. When they saw a pretty female, they abducted and raped her, then returned to the car or to the bar until a gunshot sent everyone running. The police theory could also be right. The thing is, the wife so far has described a car that isn't a car that the suspect Reed Bryant drove. She gave heights of about 5'10" to 5'11", but Boast Laster is indeed taller at 6'2", and Reed Bryant is way shorter than at 5 foot. Plus, the clothes the attackers were wearing compared to what Boast and Reed were wearing are totally different. Sounds like to me Boast Laster got screwed and is innocent. There's more to come. Boast Laster states that detectives told him that the wife was shown some mugshots, and she said Boast Laster was the one who attacked her. An article in a newspaper at the time said the same thing. But the thing is, the records that the police have doesn't mention anything about the wife identifying her attackers in a lineup. 17 days after the attack on August 6, 1963, while at a pretrial hearing, showed the wife not being able to identify Boast or Reed Bryant as the men who attacked her, and her husband. The wife did also mention that one of her attackers had a scar under his right eye that is about 1.5 inches long, but Bo nor Reed have a scar under their right eye. More contradicting details. The husband was shown a lineup of black men the day after the attack. The men he picked out weren't Boast, nor were they Reed. In this lineup, the husband picked out, of the 5 males in the lineup, a 17-year-old teen from Homestead. The husband was reported saying, quotes, "I identify Wes Mitchell Davenport by face and voice as one of the Negro men who attacked me and my wife," end quote. The second male he picked out of the lineup was an 18-year-old man from Florida City. The husband was reported saying, quotes, "I also think there is a good possibility that Thaddeus Servine Burns is also the other man who attacked us," end quote. Then on July 22nd, 1963, the day after the husband picked the first 2 males out, the wife and husband were shown another lineup. The husband this time picked Bo and Reed as their attackers. The wife was shown the same lineup, but she picked 2 different guys. There's a man that was stationed at Homestead Air Force Base, Nathan Graham, 29, at the time of the attack. He had a car then that looks just like the car the wife described. Nathan Graham has a car that's a 1956 Studebaker color cream over chocolate brown 4-door with a Continental kit. He was seen in the area driving this car with a red flashing light on the roof like a cop would have on their car. Nathan Graham did get taken in for questioning on July 20th, 1963, the day after the newlywed couple was attacked. Nathan Graham ultimately got arrested for impersonating a police officer. The police even let the wife see the car Nathan Graham drove. She even said the car was the exact car she sat in when attacked. The wife said, quote, she identified it by the color, grille interior, and by the small dent on the driver's side door, end quote. Quote, she showed the spots that she claimed were her blood on the back seat and the hump she remembered in the middle of the back seat, end quote. The odd thing was, the wife and husband were shown a lineup with Nathan Graham in it, but they were never able to pick him out. Nathan Graham was never been charged with any crime and was released and went on deployment. Despite Nathan Graham not being picked as the attacker and not being charged for that crime doesn't mean he is innocent, especially since the wife and husband have made conflicting statements. Also, it doesn't mean that he's guilty either. Nathan Graham was seen with another man, Donald Darling. Donald Darling isn't a good guy. He is known in the area to rob and mug people. The night the newlyweds were attacked, Donald Darling was at Lucy Street Bar, hanging out with another man, 26-year-old Mac Newsom. Wes Mitchell Davenport was at Lucy Street Bar too. He says that he was next to Mac Newsom, and he was being told that Donald Darling, Mac Newsom were going out, in quotes, get some white pussy, end quote. Wes Mitchell Davenport also said Mac Newsom told him Boast Laster was going to come with him. The name Wes Mitchell Davenport should sound familiar because the husband picked him out and Thaddeus Burns out in a lineup after the attack. When it comes to the trial, at first Bo and Reed were possibly going to do good because the two were being represented by a good criminal defense attorney, Philip Carlton. Boast Laster gets screwed at the last minute. 4 days before trial, at a hearing on January 2nd, 1964, Philip Carlton asked the judge, James Kehoe, if he could separate his client's trials so Boast Laster's confession wouldn't prejudice the jury against Reed Bryant, which Reed had never confessed to the attacks. Only Boast Laster did. The judge agreed. Boast Laster was given a brand new attorney, and the judge scheduled Boast Laster's trial for January 6, 1964. This gave the new attorney only 4 days to prepare for trial, which isn't enough time to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to the jury of Boast Laster's innocence. 48-year-old Michael Zarroni was Boast Laster's new attorney. Michael Zarroni wasn't a good lawyer, and of course, he's white. You can tell this because of what he said to Boast Laster the first time they ever met. Michael Zarroni said to Boast Laster, in quotes, "We'd be going to court pretty soon," end quote. Boast Laster says in response, quote, "Pretty soon? You don't know nothing about my case," end quote. Michael Zarroni says, quote, "I know a lot about your case," end quote. The lawyer left, and Boast saw his lawyer one last time, January 6, 1964. The jury consisted of 11 men, 1 woman. All were white. Prosecutor on the case was Gerald Cogan. The prosecutor was a really good one. He prosecuted 31 cases before Boast Laster's trial, and he won them all. The court's clerk's office doesn't have a transcript of Boast Laster's trial, so we can't say everything that happened that day. The judge can't help because he's dead. Same with Boast Laster's lawyer. Everything from court is coming from the memory of Boast. Michael Zarroni, the lawyer, didn't call any witnesses to help in proving where Boast Laster was that night of the attack. People that could help in the case did come to court and met with Bo Laster's lawyer, but none were called up to be used as a witness. The only thing that the lawyer, Michael Zarroni, used as evidence was the wife not being able to identify Bo as her attacker. The wife's clothes and a cover that covered the back seat of Reed Bryant's car were processed for evidence, but none of these items had semen or blood on them. Boast Laster said in the trial that it didn't seem like his lawyer cared, nor was he even trying to help him. The prosecutor used the story of the wife biting her attacker on his hand. Boast Laster had a scar on his right hand, but it was from a year prior. Bo says, in quotes, "Boy had taken a knife, and I had tried to take the knife, and he had hit me across the wrist. I had to have stitches put in. That ain't nothing like no bite mark, end quote. The thing is, the wife said she bit her attacker on the back of his left hand. The scar on Boast Laster's hand is on his inner right wrist. Laster did take the stand and said that the only reason why he confessed is because the detectives beat him. He even showed his teeth that were missing in his mouth because of the beating, but Detective Larry Foreman denied he ever beat Bo. And Larry Foreman says the teeth were missing when he was arrested. After all the things that went down during trial, it came down to the jury. 3 days later, the jury deliberated on January 9th, 1964, for only an hour and 45 minutes. The verdict was guilty, recommendation of mercy. In 1964, Florida law states a guilty verdict meant an automatic death sentence. There is a catch to this, though. If 7 out of 12 jurors recommend mercy, then the judge could choose between these options: death sentence, life in prison with parole. It took the judge 3 weeks to decide what he wanted to do. Judge said, quotes, he sentenced Boast Laster to hard labor for the remainder of his natural life, end quote. A week later, Reed Bryant went to trial. Remember, Reed Bryant got the good lawyer, Philip Carlton. The media, for some reason, didn't cover Reed Bryant's trial, but there was an article that came out from the Miami Herald dated February 14th, 1964, a day after Reed Bryant's trial. Reed Bryant got acquitted of all charges. Reed Bryant was a free man, while his friend Boast Laster is in prison for the rest of his life.